And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about Aaron Rodgers meeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we finally have some movement in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. And I think the people that are impatient are, I guess, happy, right? They're probably still upset about something. But we do have some movement. So this came after my show, of course. But Aaron Rodgers did meet with the Steelers and, met with Mike Tomlin and the coaching staff, went to the facility, and he was there for several hours. I believe he was there for like 6 hours. Now, there was no deal. There was no deal, but it does seem like that's probably where he's going to end up if he continues to play. Now, I'm looking at Pro Football Talk, and Mike Florio put out an article, and the headline is "Safe Bet: Aaron Rodgers eventually lands with the Steelers." But yeah, he spent more than 6 hours, visited with the Steelers on Friday. But yeah, we still don't have, clarity on whether he is going to, play or not, because we haven't, he hasn't made a public appearance on, Pat McAfee. So I'm assuming that it could be one of those things where he appears on the Pat McAfee show and he, lets everybody know what he intends on doing. But, yeah, look, when it comes to the Steelers, there's a lot of Steelers fans that don't want him. There's definitely some that do. Look, Rodgers could still play. He can. Now, the Steelers and the Giants are both in similar spots when it comes to the quarterback position because, and we'll get into the Giants later in the show, but the Steelers have failed to find their next quarterback. They went and drafted Kenny Pickett the year after Big Ben, and that ended up not panning out. So these last couple of years now, it's, all right, bring in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and it looked like, hey, it might make a difference. And then they ended up in the same spot that they've been in for years. Now, as an Aaron Rodgers fan, I'm not going to sit here and say that, they're going to bring in Rodgers and they're going to go to the Super Bowl and win it. I'm not going to say that. But I do think Rodgers can come in, the Steelers can win their 10 games, make the playoffs, and it might end up being more of the same. I'm not going to, I will be realistic here and say that. And for a lot of Steelers fans, they don't want that. They want significant change. They want a quarterback that's going to come in. Well, first of all, outside of Aaron Rodgers and what he brings, a lot of people don't want him. A lot of fans don't want him because it's, again, more of the same of what they've done, carrying on from last year, where you're bringing in an aging quarterback. Now you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, who's older than Russell Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is in his 40s. And you're just hoping that maybe you can, find lightning in a bottle and, you can go on this deep playoff run and get to a Super Bowl. But Steeler fans want their quarterback of the future. Now, that's not to say you bring in Aaron Rodgers and then maybe you go and you draft Jackson Dart in the late first round. Or you take a quarterback at some point in the draft. Maybe it's not with your first pick. Maybe Jackson Dart gets taken. I mean, you're hearing so many different things about the first round. There could be 3 quarterbacks. There could be 4 quarterbacks. There could be 2 quarterbacks being taken in the first round. People I talk to, they think that no quarterback should be taken in the first round in this year's draft. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the Steelers' intentions are doing with their selection. Maybe they trade up and they draft Jackson Dart. Who knows? We'll find out soon enough in about a month here. But the other thing, too, is with Rodgers is how is that relationship going to work with Arthur Smith? And then you look at the supporting cast. Is this supporting cast good enough for Aaron Rodgers? Now, I worry about the offensive line. The offensive line I worried about when he got traded to the Jets. and that ended up being a concern. That ended up not working out the offensive line. Part of the reason he got hurt. With this Steelers offensive line, it's a young offensive line. And, Aaron Rodgers is not going to, extend plays consistently like he used to because he's older now. He's got to throw from the pocket more. And, you saw how he looked when he was playing hurt last year. He was not good. And the reason why he started playing better towards the end of the year is because, he was getting healthier. And you could also say he wasn't playing against very good teams. But he's got to stay healthy. And, you look at the supporting cast, you look at the pass catchers, and you could say, well, George Pickens and DK Metcalf are not great route runners. Okay. But, when Aaron Rodgers could still sling that football, 40, 50 yards, he still has the arm strength. So if he's throwing up a 50-50 ball to George Pickens and DK Metcalf, he's going to fit it in that spot if he has to. Maybe not on a consistent basis, but he can do it. And I think the other thing, too, is with him going to the Steelers, potentially, I think Pat Freiermuth is going to be a security blanket for him. I just like, Tyler Conklin was to an extent. I think, you're going to see that, and, also the running backs. Now, right now, actually, I shouldn't say that because they signed Kenneth Gainwell, but they got Gainwell now, and, Jaylen Warren's going to be back, too. So, but Steeler fans don't want to see him dinking and dunking. You want to see big plays. And I think you will see that in this offense. But Arthur Smith has his way of running the offense, so, it's going to be interesting how that relationship goes. But, you see the clips of, Rodgers talking highly about Mike Tomlin, and, Tomlin and him both have great respect for each other. So I think that also plays a role into this as well. But I don't know. I know some people are going to say he's going to be a distraction. Look, I think he's going to be a distraction when he goes on the McAfee show. But I don't think he's going to go into that locker room and he's just going to disrupt everything. I really think the McAfee show is the biggest thing because that just gets so many that gets so much attention. But I think he's going to go in there and he's going to play ball. And if it doesn't pan out, so be it. It's a tough division that he's going to be playing in. You're going to be playing with Lamar Jackson. You're going to be playing Joe Burrow. I don't know what the Browns are doing, but we'll talk about them later in the show. But that's a very tough division. And can he be a difference maker? Can he do that? We'll see. We'll see. But I think that's where we're headed. He's going to be a Steeler. We'll talk about it when it happens. I mean, it might not happen now. It might happen after the draft. So, nothing yet, but at least we got some movement that he did visit with the Steelers. And again, I'm going to repeat this because you have people saying he's holding teams hostage. He's not holding anybody hostage. Since when does a hostage say they're willing to wait for him to make a decision? When do we hear that? They're okay. And you know what? They could easily pull themselves out of the sweepstakes and say, you know what? We're going to go in a different direction. They could easily do that. Now, you might not bring in a marquee name. Like the Steelers already brought in Mason Rudolph. But it's not like Aaron Rodgers is the end-all, be-all. And Russell Wilson is still out there. So you can still patch things up with him if you want. But I don't think that's happening at this point. But it'll be interesting. I think if Rodgers goes to the Steelers, I think he'll have a good year. But I don't think, and it's sad to say for me as a Rodgers fan once again, it's not going to lead to a Super Bowl. It's not. Make the playoffs? Yes. Maybe win one playoff game? Maybe. But that's it. That's my ceiling for Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers is 10 wins, playoff win in the first round, and then that's it. That's it. Because, are you going to Steelers go on the road against Kansas City? They go on the road against Buffalo. You're going to take the Steelers? Probably not. But this is all just hypotheticals, as I like to say. Now, listen, I would love for Aaron Rodgers to go to the Steelers and you knock off Lamar Jackson in the first round, you knock off Josh Allen in the second round, you knock off Patrick Mahomes, and then you play the Eagles in the Super Bowl as they go for a repeat and he knocks them off. But it's not happening. It's not happening. So we'll have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think about Rodgers visiting with the Steelers. Do you think we will see a potential deal in the near future? And how do you think Rodgers fits on the Steelers? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. So, and also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about LeBron James and him making his return to the court for the Lakers. We'll talk about how the Lakers have done recently and where they are currently in the Western Conference standings and if they can improve their positioning. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.